Thailand just made health insurance mandatory for every foreigner on a retirement visa. The minimum coverage is 40,000 baht inpatient, 40,000 baht outpatient per year. Sounds reasonable, until you find out that most of the insurers approved for this program won't touch anyone over 65 with a pre-existing condition. And the ones that will? They are charging prices that will consume the entire monthly budget that made Thailand make sense in the first place. This is the story of a viewer named Martin. He did the math. He had a plan. The law didn't care. Before we continue, please subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any videos in the future. My name is Martin Kowalski. I want to tell you what happened to me, not because I am looking for sympathy, but because what happened to me is about to happen to a lot of other people who have no idea it is coming. I spent 31 years teaching high school history in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Not a glamorous career by anyone's measure, but a good one. I liked what I did. I liked the kids, most of them, most of the time, and I liked the particular satisfaction of watching a teenager suddenly understand why something that happened 100 years ago still mattered to them today. It is the kind of work that stays in your body even after you leave it. I retired at 63. Not because I had to, not because I was pushed, but because the math worked and because I had spent enough cold winters scraping ice off a windshield at 6 in the morning before a 7-hour workday that I wanted to find out what the other version of my life looked like. I was not wealthy. I was not reckless. I was the kind of person who read the footnotes, who kept files, who made folders for things other people just kept in their heads. My pension from the Milwaukee Public Schools came to $1,850 a month. When Social Security kicked in 2 years after I retired, I added another $1,420. Total monthly income, $3,270. I had $145,000 in savings, accumulated slowly over 3 decades from modest contributions, a small inheritance from my mother, and the careful habit of spending less than I earned. No debt, no mortgage. The house I'd rented for 20 years had belonged to someone else. I never got around to buying, which turned out to be less of a regret and more of an accidental gift when I eventually needed to move. No car payment, no credit card balance, no financial entanglements. By most measures, I had done things right. The question I started asking myself around 2019 was whether doing things right in Milwaukee was the same as doing them right everywhere. That winter answered it for me. February 2019. -17 with the wind chill, which in Milwaukee is not unusual. It is simply the annual reminder that the city was built by people who did not have other options. I was 61 years old, scraping ice off a car I only drove twice a week to get to the grocery store, eating reheated soup alone in an apartment that cost me $1,000 a month between rent, heat, and maintenance. The soup was fine. The apartment was fine. Everything was fine in the way that fine becomes unbearable when you have been doing it for long enough. That same winter, I had a minor procedure. Nothing dramatic, a small benign growth removed from my forearm. Outpatient, about 40 minutes at a clinic 10 minutes from my apartment. The doctor was polite. The nurse was competent. The anesthesia was local. The bill that arrived 6 weeks later came to $4,200 after insurance. $4,200 for 40 minutes and a Band-Aid. I sat in my kitchen and looked at that piece of paper for a long time. I did not throw it across the room. I did not call anyone. I just sat there and looked at it and thought about what $4,200 meant in a country where 40 minutes of minor outpatient care could cost that much after you had already paid your premiums. And then I opened my laptop and I started researching. I want to be clear about what happened next because it matters to the story. I did not panic. I did not make an impulsive decision. I did not fall for anything or get sucked in by a fantasy. Researching, when something felt wrong or uncertain, was simply what I did. It was how I had prepared lessons, managed the classroom budget, navigated 31 years of institutional bureaucracy. Something needed to change, and the first step toward changing it was understanding what the options actually were. I found the expat forums, Retire Cheap, Thai Visa, The Facebook groups, Chiang Mai Expats, retiring in Thailand, Americans abroad over 50, living in Chiang Mai. And I read them for months before I ever posted a single question. I read cost breakdowns. I read visa guides. I read threads about healthcare, about the hospitals, about what happens when something goes wrong. I read arguments between people about whether Chiang Mai was too touristy now, whether Hua Hin was underrated, whether Pattaya was a trap or just misunderstood. I was not looking for reassurance. I was looking for the full picture, including the problems. I found the Thai immigration website. I downloaded the official non-OA retirement visa requirements, the income or savings threshold, the insurance requirement, the renewal process, the overstay penalties. I printed them out. I highlighted the relevant sections in yellow. I made a spreadsheet, not a rough estimate scrawled on the back of an envelope, but a proper spreadsheet with categories and formulas, and a second tab for contingencies, and a third tab for exchange rate sensitivity analysis showing what my monthly income looked like at 28 baht to the dollar, at 30, at 33, and at 35. I thought about things going wrong. I modeled them. I built the buffer in. In late 2020, after months of reading and planning, I flew to Chiang Mai for 30 days on a tourist visa to see what it was actually like as opposed to what the forums said it was like. I walked every part of the city. I explored Nimen Road, the old city inside the moat, Santatham, the night bazaar, the neighborhoods north of the canal that most tourists never see. I visited 3 hospitals, Chiang Mai Ram, Bangkok Hospital Chiang Mai, and a smaller clinic near Nimen, so I would know what they looked like before I ever needed one in an emergency. I priced grocery stores, I priced restaurants, I ate at night markets, and I ate at the Rimping supermarket, and I ate at a vegetarian restaurant run by a monks organization near Doi Suthep. I tracked every baht I spent. I also paid $150 for a single hour with an immigration consultant, a man named Paul, who had been helping Americans and Europeans navigate Thai visas for 15 years from a small office near Tha Phai Gate. I came to that meeting with a written list of questions I had prepared over the previous week. I asked about the insurance requirement, about what happens if the rules change mid-visa, about what the renewal process actually looks like in practice versus what the website says, about whether my income level was solidly above the threshold or just barely, about what the contingency looked like if my pension was adjusted. Paul answered every question on my list. He was measured and direct, and he had obviously been asked all of these things before. He told me the rules were stable, well-documented, and that Thailand maintained one of the more consistently foreigner-friendly retirement visa systems in Southeast Asia, because the immigration infrastructure around the non-OA had been in place for long enough that the bureaucratic procedures were predictable. He said that. He said, predictable. I wrote it down. I came back to Milwaukee in November 2020. I spent the winter making the final decision. I gave my landlord notice in January 2021. I spent February selling, donating, or storing nearly everything I owned: furniture, books, kitchen appliances, the accumulated possessions of 30 years in a rented apartment. I kept one box of things that mattered: photographs, documents, a few books I could not part with. I shipped that box ahead. I bought a one-way ticket to Chiang Mai for March 2021, and I felt, for the first time in years, maybe for the first time since my wife left in 2009, if I am being honest about the emotional timeline, like a man who was not just surviving a season, but walking toward something he had chosen on purpose. I want to describe the math precisely, because it is the spine of everything that follows, and I need you to understand it the way I understood it in early 2021, as something solid, tested, conservative by design. Chiang Mai in the spring of 2021 was not cheap in the sense that everything was free or that quality was absent. It was genuinely, structurally affordable in a way that a person on a fixed income could build a real life around, not a compromised life, a real one. I had done the research and the recce trip and the spreadsheet, and the numbers were consistent every time I ran them. I found a one-bedroom condo on Nimen Road, Nimen Soi 17, if you know Chiang Mai, through a property rental agent I had contacted from Milwaukee. Good building. Concrete construction, so it stayed cool. Clean, well-maintained, with a Western-style kitchen because I cook, and I wanted to cook. Fast fiber internet because I plan to write and keep in touch with people back home. A small gym in the building basement, 5 minutes walk from a rimping supermarket, which for expats in Chiang Mai functions as the grocery store of record for anything you can't find at the local markets. The rent, 8,500 baht per month. At the exchange rate in March 2021, close to 33 baht to the dollar, that was approximately $258 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in a clean, well-located building in one of the most pleasant mid-sized cities in Southeast Asia. My food budget, based on what I had actually spent during my recce month, was 15,000 baht if I cooked most of my meals and went out for dinner 3 or 4 times a week. That number included my coffee habit. I spent most mornings at one of the independent cafes that Niman is full of, which typically charged 60 to 80 baht for a good Americano, sitting with my laptop and working on the memoir I had been meaning to write for years. Transport, 3,000 baht, because I was not going to own a vehicle. I took songthaeus for local travel, occasionally rented a scooter for day trips, and used Grab for the airport or late nights. Utilities, electricity, water, internet, ran about 4,000 baht in the cooler months and climbed toward 6,000 during the hot season when the air conditioning ran constantly. Phone, about 1,000 baht. Health expenses I budgeted conservatively at 3,000 baht a month, assuming routine consultations and the cost of my metformin prescription, which cost about 300 baht for a month's supply at a local pharmacy, a drug that cost me $40 a month with insurance back in Milwaukee. Entertainment, social activities, the occasional weekend trip within Thailand, books, small pleasures, 5,000 baht. Total monthly spend, approximately 38 to 40,000 baht per month. At the conversion rate I was working with, that was roughly $1,100 to $1,200, against an income of $3,270 a month that left a monthly surplus, in baht terms at 33 to the dollar, of approximately 50,000 baht. $1,450 left over every single month after living a comfortable and genuinely full life. That number was not a rounding error. That was the point. I had built the budget conservatively, using the higher end of my expense estimates and the lower end of my income figures, and I still had $1,400 a month left over. That surplus was what I was going to use to rebuild savings, to handle emergencies, to travel, to live rather than merely exist. I had not felt that kind of financial space in Milwaukee since the years before the 2008 crisis, when a teacher's salary still felt like enough. I arrived at Chiang Mai International Airport on the 14th of March, 2021. The evening air when I stepped outside the terminal was warm, genuinely warm. Not Milwaukee in July humid, but dry and tropical warm, with the smell of something flowering in the median of the airport road and the shapes of the mountains visible against a darkening sky to the west. I took a Grab to the condo. I dropped my bags, showered, walked to the nearest street food stall, and ate pad krapao with a fried egg on top for 60 baht, while a dog slept under the table next to me. I had done everything right. I was somewhere beautiful and affordable, and I had earned it with 31 years of lesson plans and parent-teacher conferences and budget meetings in fluorescent-lit rooms. I felt free in a way that I had not felt, perhaps, since I was young enough not to know how rare that feeling would become. The first year in Chiang Mai was exactly what I had planned. Not slightly better than expected, not exactly as imagined down to the last detail, but real and genuine and good in the particular way that a life you have actually chosen tends to be. By May, I had a routine. Coffee at a place near Niman Soi, 3 in the mornings, where the owner remembered my order by the second week. Writing in the afternoons, usually 2 or 3 hours at the same table, working through the chapter about my father's death and what teaching history had taught me about grief. Walking the moat in the early evening, which is one of the underrated rituals of Chiang Mai life. The moat road at 5 in the afternoon, when the light goes gold, and the tuk-tuks slow down, and the monks are returning to the temples, and the whole city has a quality of settledness that a person raised in a place that is always rushing somewhere tends to find profoundly restoring. I made friends, not many, but real ones. A retired British teacher named Colin, who I had found through the Facebook group and who shared the Tuesday morning coffee habit. a Danish woman named Ingrid, who was teaching at an international school and who invited me to a surprisingly good live jazz night at a bar near the night bazaar. A couple from New Zealand who had been in Chiang Mai for 6 years and who knew which markets had the freshest produce on which days and which restaurants were genuine and which were performing for tourists. I had dinner parties, nothing elaborate, just 5 or 6 people around a table with good Thai food ordered in and a bottle of something from the wine shop on Niman. I went to Doi Inthanon for a weekend. I visited Chiang Mai. I started a second memoir chapter. There were rumblings. There are always rumblings in the expat groups about policy changes or visa complications or something someone's agent had supposedly heard from someone at the immigration office. In July 2021, someone posted in the main Chiang Mai expats group about a possible update to the insurance requirements for the non-OA visa, something about the Office of Insurance Commission reviewing the approved insurer list. A few people commented. One said they'd heard the same rumor the previous year and nothing had materialized. Another said their immigration agent had called the OIC directly and been told there was no update planned. The post got 12 comments and then dropped off the feed. I read it, I noted it, I did not act on it. In retrospect, that note, that first mention of the thing that was eventually going to take my spreadsheet apart, deserved more than a mental file. But the information available at the time suggested it was noise, and I treated it as noise, because I was a man with a legal visa and a compliant insurance policy, and a life that was working exactly as designed. Insurance in those first years was simply a line item. Required for the visa, yes, but a settled one. When I arrived, I had taken out a policy with Pacific Cross, a company with a well-established presence in Thailand, widely used by expats on retirement visas, and clearly listed on the approved insurer list maintained by the Office of Insurance Commission. The premium was 18,000 baht for the year. About $530. The policy provided 40,000 baht inpatient coverage and 40,000 baht outpatient coverage, which met the minimum requirement for the non-OA visa. I received the certificate, submitted it with my first visa renewal package through Kuhn Rathaporn, and the renewal was processed without issue. I did not think about insurance again for months. It was background. It was handled. I was legal and compliant, and the number was manageable. My second year, I met Colin for our Tuesday coffee, and he told me about the switch he'd made. He had been paying about 15,000 baht a year with AXA, and had found, through the expat group and some research of his own, that several long-term expats in the group had moved to a local Thai insurer, Krung Thai, for their non-OA coverage, a state-affiliated insurer with a specific product for foreign retirees that met the minimum requirements at a significantly lower price point. 11,000 baht a year. Colin had already completed one full renewal cycle with the Krung Thai policy and reported no issues. The immigration office had accepted the certificate, his visa had been renewed, everything was in order. I looked into it. I was a careful man. I found the Krung Thai policy documentation. I verified that the coverage met the 40,000 inpatient and 40,000 outpatient minimums. And then I did the thing that I have since replayed in my mind many times. I looked for Krung Thai on the approved insurer list maintained by the OIC. I found it. The company appeared there. What I did not do, what I did not know to do, was investigate how frequently that list was updated, what the update process looked like, whether the specific product I was being sold matched the specific approved entry for the company, or whether the list I was looking at was current to the month or the year or several years prior. I saw the company name. I paid the cheaper premium. I saved 7,000 baht. I felt, as I will admit now with a certain embarrassed clarity, clever about it. That decision, to switch from Pacific Cross to Krung Thai in order to save 7,000 baht per year, approximately $200, was not stupid. I want to say that again, because I have spent considerable energy since then resisting the narrative that what happened to me was my own fault. The decision was rational. It was based on real information. Another expat I trusted had made the same decision before me and had one successful renewal to show for it. The policy met the stated requirements. The insurer appeared on the approved list. I did not cut a corner. I took a measured, reasonable step to manage costs efficiently within the rules as I understood them. The trap that was assembling around me at that moment was not being assembled by my carelessness. It was being assembled by a system that was about to change the rules quietly, without notification, after I had already committed my life to what was on the other side of them. Before we continue, please subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any videos in the future. The email arrived on a Tuesday in February 2023. Not a physical letter, an email from my immigration agent, Kuhn Rathaporn, who managed the visa renewal logistics for about 40 foreign retirees in the Niman area. The subject line read, "Important, Insurance Compliance Update, Action Required." I was at my kitchen table with my morning coffee when I opened it. By the time I reached the end of the email, the coffee was cold and I had not noticed. The Thai government, through the Office of Insurance Commission, had updated the approved insurer list for non-OA and non-OX retirement visas. The update had been published in a Royal Gazette announcement in December 2022. It took effect for visa renewals beginning in April 2023. Krung Thai's specific retirement expat product, the product I held, the product Colin held, the product a significant number of expats in the group had switched to in recent years, was no longer on the compliant list. Not Krung Thai as a company entirely, a different Krung Thai product, one with different coverage terms, remained approved. But the policy I had, the policy number I had submitted for my previous 2 renewals, did not qualify under the new framework. I had 90 days from the date of that email to obtain a compliant policy or my visa renewal would be denied. I read the email twice. I sat for a moment. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up a new spreadsheet tab, navigated to the OIC website, found the updated approved insurer list. It was there, 12 pages in a PDF, dated December 2022, and I started working through it methodically. This was, I told myself, a problem with a solution. I was an organized man. I would find the solution. There were 13 insurance companies on the new approved list for non-OA retirement visa holders. I spent the next 10 days contacting every one of them. Some had online application portals with medical questionnaires I could complete in English. Others required phone calls or in-person visits to their offices or their agents. The experience of making those contacts, of working through those questionnaires, is something I find difficult to describe accurately because the process was simultaneously mundane and quietly devastating. I am 67 years old. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 2018. The year before, I started planning the move to Thailand. The diabetes is controlled. I take metformin, 500 milligrams twice daily. My most recent A1C reading, done at a Chiang Mai clinic 6 months before this story, was 6.8, within the managed range, below the threshold that would qualify as poorly controlled by any clinical standard. I do not smoke. I drink alcohol perhaps once a week, usually a single glass of wine at dinner. I am not overweight. I walk at least 45 minutes a day. My blood pressure runs slightly elevated, but within the manageable range on a low-dose medication I have taken for 4 years. By the standards of a 67-year-old retired American man, I am in reasonable health managing a set of common, stable, chronic conditions with 2 inexpensive oral medications. I'd thought of my diabetes the way I thought of my reading glasses, a minor accommodation to the biology of aging, not a defining characteristic of my risk profile. A manageable fact of life, not a medical crisis. The approved insurers disagreed. Of the 13 companies, 6 declined to offer me any coverage at all. Their policies had maximum entry ages, or their underwriting criteria automatically excluded applicants with diabetes and a cardiovascular medication on record, or their products were available only to applicants under 65, a threshold I had passed 2 years earlier. 3 more companies offered coverage with what they called an exclusion rider, a policy that would meet the technical visa requirement, but would explicitly exclude any hospitalization or treatment directly or indirectly attributable to my diabetes or its associated complications. Those policies would have kept me legal for the visa. They would not have protected me from the medical expenses I was most statistically likely to incur. I noted them as technically compliant, but practically useless, and kept calling. 2 companies declined me on age alone, without even reaching the medical questionnaire. Their products had an entry age cap of 65. I was 2 years past it. That left 2 companies, Bupa Thailand, Allianz Ayudhya. I spoke with agents at both. I asked for written quotes. I received them within a week, and I opened them at the same kitchen table where I had opened Kuhn Rathaporn's email, with a legal pad this time as well as the spreadsheet, because when the numbers matter this much, I prefer to write them by hand. Bupa Thailand, 87,000 baht per year. Annual premium, payable upfront or in installments with a small surcharge for the installment option. The policy met the visa requirement, 40,000 baht inpatient, 40,000 baht outpatient. It came with a diabetes exclusion rider, meaning that any hospitalization or outpatient treatment directly attributable to diabetes or its recognized complications, neuropathy, nephropathy, retinopathy, cardiovascular events with a documented link to the diabetic profile, would not be covered. Anything unrelated to diabetes would be. The agent was clear about this. She said it several times, which I appreciated. Allianz Ayudhya, 94,000 baht per year, slightly more expensive, no diabetes exclusion rider. The policy would cover diabetes-related treatment after a 12-month waiting period from the policy start date. Before that waiting period elapsed, no diabetes-related claims. After it elapsed, covered at the standard terms. The agent at Allianz was helpful and precise. He confirmed the waiting period applied to all pre-existing conditions disclosed on the medical questionnaire. I did the math, slowly, carefully, on the legal pad first. My pension, $1,850 a month, $22,200 a year. The cheapest compliant policy was Bupa at 87,000 baht, which, at a 34 baht to the dollar exchange rate, was approximately $2,558 a year. Monthly, that was $213. My previous insurance had cost 11,000 baht a year, roughly $320 annually, or $27 a month. The new annual cost was approximately 8 times what I had been paying. On a monthly basis, my insurance line item had increased from $27 to $213. That sounds manageable. In pure arithmetic, it is manageable. $213 a month does not, by itself, destroy a $3,000 monthly income. But the budget was not designed to absorb $213 in additional fixed monthly expenses. The budget was designed with every category calibrated, with a surplus that existed as the margin of safety, not as free money. The 50,000 baht monthly surplus that was the entire point of the plan, the proof that Thailand worked, was now 37,000 baht, roughly $1,000, still positive, still technically viable. But the buffer that was supposed to protect me from the unexpected had shrunk by 26%, and I had done nothing wrong to lose it. The rules had changed while I was following the old ones. I chose Bupa. I paid the 87,000 baht up front. I've always preferred paying annual premiums in full rather than risking a lapse through an installment missed, and submitted the new certificate to Kuhn Rathaporn. My visa renewal was processed. I was legal, compliant, in Thailand, with a valid policy and a valid visa, and a life that looked, from the outside, and to most of the people in it, more or less the same as it had the year before. But something had changed in how I lived inside that life. The feeling of abundance, the quality that had made the move feel not just viable, but genuinely liberating, was replaced by something I can only describe as the feeling of managed scarcity. A constant, low-level arithmetic running in the background of every purchase and every decision. Could I justify the wine at dinner, the taxi instead of the songthayo, the slightly better cut of fish at the market? These were not dramatic privations. They were small recalibrations. But the cumulative weight of small recalibrations, when applied to every decision every day, changes a person. I began to understand that year that financial anxiety is not primarily about large disasters. It is about the erosion of ease, the slow disappearance of the assumption that things will be fine. I renewed the Bupa policy 12 months later. My renewal notice arrived in January 2024. The new premium, 97,000 baht, 10,000 baht more than the previous year, $295 additional annually. I called the agent, a courteous young man named Krit, who managed a portfolio of about 60 expat accounts, and asked him to explain the increase. He explained it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, which from his professional vantage point it probably was. The retirement expat product was age-banded. Each year, as a policyholder's age increased, the premium adjusted to reflect the actuarial risk profile of the new age cohort. This was standard industry practice. He showed me, when I asked, the projected premium bands for the next several years. At age 70, the expected annual premium was approximately 115,000 baht, assuming the current pricing structure held. At 72, closer to 135,000 baht. At 73 or 74, the band suggested approximately 140 to 150,000 baht annually. Krit said this without particular emphasis. He was relaying actuarial data. I thanked him, hung up, and sat very still for a few minutes. At 145,000 baht a year, roughly $4,350 at a 33 baht rate, my insurance premium alone would exceed my monthly pension by more than $500 annually. Not just consume a significant portion, exceed the total. Every month, I would need to draw on Social Security income just to pay for the legal right to remain in the country. That was one side of the compression. The other side was the exchange rate, and I want to explain this clearly because it is something that people who have not lived abroad on a fixed dollar income for multiple years tend to underestimate, not in the abstract but in the specific, grinding, cumulative way it operates. My income arrives in dollars, my expenses exist in baht. Every month I convert, and every month the conversion ratio can vary by an amount that sounds small and is not. When I arrived in March 2021, I was converting at close to 33 baht per dollar on good days. Through 2022, the rate fluctuated between 30 and 34. In the second half of 2023, it drifted lower. I was frequently converting at 30 to 31. The difference between 33 baht to the dollar and 31 baht to the dollar on a monthly income of $3,270 is specifically 3,270 multiplied by 33 equals 107,910 baht. 3,270 multiplied by 31 equals 101,370 baht. 6,540 baht difference per month, not because I had spent it, not because I had made a bad decision, because the rate moved. 6,500 baht, about $200, simply gone from my monthly budget every time the baht strengthened. Combined, the insurance premium had increased from 18,000 baht a year to 97,000 baht a year over a 2-year period, and my real income in baht had decreased by approximately 6,500 baht per month due to exchange rate movement. My actual monthly surplus in late 2023, the number I wrote on the legal pad, slowly and with great deliberateness to force myself to accept it, was approximately 15,000 baht, $430. That was what stood between my plan working and my plan failing. One moderate unexpected expense, and I went negative. Not catastrophically, not immediately, but the math was now living on the edge of a knife. And I knew, in the way that a person who has managed money carefully for a lifetime knows, that living on the edge of a knife is not a strategy. It is a countdown. I started cutting things. I am not going to list every small reduction because it would be tedious, and the list is also, in a quiet way, humiliating. I cooked more. I stopped the weekend trips within Thailand, Pai, Lampang, Chiang Mai, that had been a regular pleasure of the first 2 years. I found a slightly cheaper coffee shop. I did not buy new books. I used the expat library exchange near the old city. I told myself I was simplifying, living more intentionally, finding what was essential. That is what you tell yourself when the reality is that you are retreating from the life you built, because the math is losing ground. I did not tell anyone. I did not call my daughter in Milwaukee. I did not post in the Facebook group. I just sat with the numbers at night and looked for solutions that did not exist in the forms I was looking for them. The hospital was a Tuesday, February 2024. I woke at 4 in the morning with my heart doing something it had never done before. A rapid, disordered rhythm, not painful precisely, but arresting in the literal sense that it stopped me from doing anything else. I lay very still in the dark and waited to see if it would resolve on its own. It did not. I called Chiang Mai Ram Hospital's international patient line, which is staffed at 4 in the morning because that is one of the things about the private hospitals in Chiang Mai that I had always found quietly remarkable. A car was at my building within 12 minutes. I was connected to an ECG machine within 20 minutes of that. The cardiologist on call, a Thai doctor who had done his specialist training in the United Kingdom and who spoke careful, measured English, told me I had atrial fibrillation, not a heart attack, not immediately life-threatening, but requiring monitoring, evaluation, and a treatment plan. I stayed 3 nights. The ECG monitoring, the blood work, the echocardiogram ordered during the admission, the medication adjustment, the daily cardiologist consultations, the nursing care, 68,000 baht, $1,980. I filed the claim with Bupa the day after discharge. Bupa covered 41,000 baht, the inpatient maximum on my policy. I owed the difference, 27,000 baht out of pocket, $785, drawn from savings, because there was no room in my monthly budget for 27,000 baht. The monthly surplus that had felt like a cushion was gone. This was the savings account, the number I had been keeping intact as a psychological anchor for 3 years. The cardiologist then recommended follow-up outpatient procedures, an echocardiogram at rest, and a stress test to establish a baseline after the arrhythmia episode. 18,000 baht. My outpatient coverage had been partially used through the year, about 9,000 baht on routine consultations, so I still had 31,000 baht of outpatient limit remaining. The follow-up tests were covered. I was grateful for that in a way that felt both genuine and diminished, because covered by insurance, that you are paying 97,000 baht a year for should feel like more than a narrow escape. The cardiologist also prescribed a beta blocker, a standard widely used medication for atrial fibrillation rate control. I assumed it would be covered. I filed the prescription claim. Bupa's claims coordinator called me the following week. The medication, she explained, was flagged under a clause relating to pre-existing cardiovascular risk factors associated with my diabetes profile. My type 2 diabetes was a documented pre-existing condition. The new cardiac diagnosis created what she called an adjacency to that pre-existing condition, which placed ongoing cardiovascular medications in an excluded category under the terms of the diabetes exclusion rider. I could appeal, she said, and they would review the clinical documentation. I could speak with their medical review team. The appeal process, she told me, typically took 4 to 6 weeks. In the meantime, I paid for the medication out of pocket. About 6,200 baht a month, approximately $180 every month, without coverage, for a medication my cardiologist considered necessary for a condition I had just been hospitalized for. I described this not to catalog grievances. The Bupa representatives were uniformly polite and professional, and the policy terms were what they had been when I signed. But because I think it is important to understand what it means in practice to be a person who is insured and who discovers that the insurance covers the category of your life that is less urgent and not the category that is most urgent. I was legal. I was compliant. I had done everything the Thai immigration system required of me. And the coverage I had obtained to satisfy that requirement was not sufficient to protect me from the costs I was actually facing as a 68-year-old man with an established chronic condition and a new cardiac diagnosis. I opened my savings account on a Friday afternoon. I transferred the 27,000 baht hospital gap. I looked at the new balance, $118,000 roughly, after 3 years of slow draws and occasional shortfalls. Then, I transferred another 8,000 baht a few weeks later for prescription costs I could not absorb from monthly income. I looked at that second number. I understood, for the first time with real clarity, that I was watching a familiar crack become a fracture. Several weeks later, I sat down at the kitchen table and forced myself to do the calculation I had been avoiding, not the immediate situation, the trajectory, what the next 10 years looked like on a graph, plotted honestly. Starting savings when I arrived, $145,000. Current savings, mid-2024, approximately $118,000. Drawdown over 3 years, $27,000. Some from the hospital gap, some from gradual monthly shortfalls in the leaner months when the exchange rate moved against me. Some from prescriptions and out-of-pocket medical costs that accumulated quietly over 12 months. Approximately $9,000 per year. On a $145,000 base, a $9,000 annual draw sounds manageable. Then I ran the forward projection, accounting for rising insurance premiums. Current annual insurance cost, 97,000 baht, approximately $2,900 at 33-1. Projected at age 70, 115,000 baht, $3,500. At 72, 135,000 baht, $4,100. At 73, using the age band Crit had shown me, approximately 145,000 baht. At 35 baht to the dollar on an optimistic exchange rate assumption, that is $4,140 per year. My pension is $22,200 per year. The insurance premium at 73 would represent approximately 18.6% of my total annual pension income, not the surplus, the total. And that is before rent, before food, before transport, before medicine, before anything. By age 73, at that trajectory, my pension will be entirely consumed by insurance and basic fixed costs. My only remaining income will be Social Security, $17,040 a year, and whatever savings remain. The savings, drawing down at an accelerating rate as medical costs increase with age and insurance gaps widen, will likely be somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 by that point. A cushion that sounds substantial until you run it against the cost of being a 73-year-old man with atrial fibrillation, type 2 diabetes, and no country to fall back on affordably. I then looked at the alternative, returning to the United States. This is the calculation that most people in my situation have not run honestly, because it requires confronting the fact that going back is not a rescue. It is a different kind of crisis. I gave up my apartment in Milwaukee in January 2021. I have no established address in the United States. I have been outside the country continuously since March 2021. Re-entering the American housing market at 68 years old on a fixed income in any mid-tier city, not just Milwaukee, means rent of at minimum $1,400 to $1,600 per month for something basic and safe. That is before utilities, before food, before transportation, before health care. My total U.S. monthly expenses, based on the cost structures I knew before I left and adjusted conservatively upward for 3 years of inflation, would likely run between $2,500 and $3,200 a month. Against a $3,270 monthly income, that is a $0 to $300 monthly surplus, before health care. My Medicare eligibility has not changed. I am entitled to Part A and Part B. But Medicare does not cover any care outside the United States, which means my Chiang Mai medical history offers no continuity. I would re-enter the American system as a 68-year-old with atrial fibrillation and type 2 diabetes, requiring a new cardiologist, a new GP, new prescriptions, new referrals, new copays, new systems. The out-of-pocket costs of re-establishing care in the United States healthcare system, even with Medicare, for someone with my profile typically run several $1,000s per year minimum. And establishing residency, finding housing, replacing the few possessions I do not have, rebuilding the basic infrastructure of a life takes time I would spend drawing on savings. Going back solves the insurance compliance problem in Thailand. It replaces it with a cost of living and healthcare cost problem in the United States. That is, by the numbers I can actually calculate, equally or more catastrophic. I am not prevented from going back by emotion or by stubbornness or by attachment to a lifestyle. I am prevented by arithmetic. Thailand is too expensive to stay in comfortably at its current trajectory. America is too expensive to return to at current prices. The window between those two realities narrows every year I age. That is the trap. It is precise, it is structural. And it was built without malice and without anyone particularly intending it, by the interaction of an insurance mandate, an age-banded premium structure, a variable exchange rate, and the normal biology of growing older. I stayed quiet for several weeks after finishing that calculation. Then, one evening, I opened the Chiang Mai Expats Facebook group, the same group I had been reading since 2019, where I had first seen the rumor about insurance policy updates that nobody took seriously, and I posted. I described my situation honestly, the insurance cost, the premium trajectory, the hospital gap, the projection. Not everything. Not the numbers at the level of detail I have given you here. But enough. A real description of what was actually happening in numbers to a person who had done the research and followed the rules. The private messages started arriving within an hour. By the next morning, there were 34. By the end of the second day, 61. I am still answering some of them now. There was a woman named Anne, 71 years old, a retired ICU nurse from Calgary, Alberta, who had moved to Chiang Mai in 2019. She was, in some respects, in a worse position than mine. Her medical history included both type 2 diabetes and a documented cardiac event from 2017, a mild myocardial infarction that had been successfully treated and from which she had fully recovered. But that record, combined with her age, had produced a result from the approved insurer list that was not a reduced offering, but a complete one. All 13 companies had declined to issue her any policy at all. Not a policy with exclusions, not a policy with a waiting period, nothing. She was currently on an education visa, enrolled in a Thai language class that met twice a week at a school near the Tha Phai Gate, which does not carry the insurance requirement. She was paying full out-of-pocket costs for every medical interaction and trying, in her word, to stay healthy by sheer will until she figured out what to do. She knew the education visa workaround was fragile. She knew the language school requirement could be enforced more strictly, or that the visa category itself could be modified in a future update. She was living, she told me, like a person waiting for a second shoe to drop. There was a man named Ray, 69, a retired civil engineer from Perth, Western Australia, who had built a life in Chiang Mai over 4 years with his Thai wife. Ray's insurance situation had resolved technically. His wife's Thai citizenship gave them access to household structures that softened the requirement, but the compliance cost was still significant enough that the financial case for staying in Thailand had fundamentally changed. More than that, the experience of navigating the system had exhausted and alienated him in a way he described with the particular tiredness of a person who has been efficient their whole life and discovered that efficiency is not always enough. He was spending 3 months in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh, in an apartment he found through an expat group there, while his wife managed some administrative matters from the Thai side. He had not slept properly in 4 months. He told me this simply, without complaint, as if it were just another data point. There was an American couple from Eugene, Oregon. I will call them the Hendersons because they asked me not to use their real names, who had discovered the insurance problem not after arriving, but during a pre-move due diligence consultation with an immigration lawyer they had hired 18 months before they had planned to relocate. They had already paid a refundable deposit on a condo in Chiang Mai, refundable according to the agent's description of the contract, not according to the actual contract terms, and had begun the emotional and logistical process of preparing to leave the United States. When the insurance reality became clear, both had pre-existing conditions that would significantly limit their options. They pivoted to Vietnam. The pivot cost them the loss of 30% of their Thai condo deposit, which they could not recover under the contract as written. It cost them approximately $12,000 in redirected logistics, travel, and relocation planning. It cost them, in less quantifiable terms, the particular grief of losing a plan you have built your imagination around. They told me Vietnam had its own complications, but they were there. They were not doing the calculation I was doing at my kitchen table at midnight. And then, someone in the thread, a man who identified himself as a retired Thai immigration attorney who occasionally contributed to the group on policy matters, shared an analysis he had seen from a legal forum that aggregated OIC data with demographic surveys of the non-OA retirement visa holder population. The analysis estimated that between 68 and 72% of current non-OA retirement visa holders over the age of 60 with any documented pre-existing condition, not rare or severe conditions, but common managed conditions like diabetes, controlled hypertension, previous cardiac events, managed thyroid conditions, could not obtain a fully compliant insurance policy at a cost that preserved the financial argument for retiring in Thailand. More than two-thirds, the majority, not edge cases, not the reckless or the ill-prepared. People who had done the research, made the spreadsheets, hired the consultants, followed the rules. The majority of them, if they had a common chronic condition, which most people in their 60s do, were either non-insurable at any price, insurable only at a price that destroyed their budget, or insurable only with exclusions that rendered the coverage practically useless for their actual risk profile. That is the 70%. Not a headline written for shock. The lived arithmetic of the majority of older expats in Thailand with a medical history. I am still here. I want to say that clearly and without qualification, because I think it matters to the honest telling of this story. I am in Chiang Mai. I have a valid visa and a compliant insurance policy and a life that, from the outside and even from the inside on good days, retains the qualities I came here for. The mountains are still there. The light still goes gold at 5 in the afternoon on the moat road. The pad kra pao from the woman at the end of my SOI still costs 60 baht and is still one of the best things I eat in any given week. I have made adjustments. I moved to a smaller apartment on the other side of Niman, 6,200 baht a month instead of 8,500, one less room, no Western kitchen, adequate in all the ways that matter and quieter in a few ways I have learned to value. I cook nearly everything at home now. I found the expat library and stopped buying books. I cut the scooter rental and walk more, which is probably good for me. I started doing online English tutoring through a platform that connects retired native speakers with Thai university students preparing for IELTS and TOEFL examinations. It brings in roughly 15,000 baht a month, about $430, and the work is not unpleasant. The students are curious and motivated, and the sessions remind me, in a way I had not expected, of what I liked about teaching. It gives structure to mornings that would otherwise be shapeless. It adds an income line that buys me, at current costs, perhaps 2.5 to 3 additional years of runway before the numbers become truly critical. I have extended my timeline. I have not solved the problem. So what do I tell people now? Because I get asked. People find my name through the Facebook groups and through private messages and through the occasional expat gathering where someone mentions having read my post. What do I tell someone who is sitting in 2024 where I was sitting in 2019, reading the forums, making the spreadsheet, feeling smart about the plan? Get your insurance quotes before you buy the plane ticket. Not after the visa is approved, not during the settling in year when things are going well and insurance feels like background noise. Before you book anything, before you give notice on your apartment, before you make the decision feel real and irreversible. Go to the OIC website, find the current approved insurer list, download it, and note the date, because the list changes, and it changes without announcement, and the version you find today may not be the version that governs your second renewal. Contact all 13 companies on the list, not the 3 that look most promising, all of them. Tell each one your full medical history, your current medications, your most recent diagnoses. Ask for a written quote with the terms spelled out. Do this before you have any emotional investment in the outcome, because doing it after you are already in love with the mountains is a very different exercise. Factor premium increases into every financial model you build, not a flat annual cost, a rising one. An age-banded premium increases by somewhere between 8 and 15% per year of age on most of the retirement expat products currently on the approved list. Do not model your insurance cost at 65 and assume it holds through 72. Model it at 70, model it at 72. Model your total monthly expenses at those ages at a conservative exchange rate. I would suggest running your numbers at 30 baht to the dollar even if the current rate is better, and ask yourself what your surplus looks like. If that surplus is less than 50,000 baht, not your comfortable margin, your actual emergency cushion, the plan has a structural weakness that will find you eventually. Understand what the approved insurer list actually means and how often it is updated. This is not something most Visa Guide articles explain clearly. The list is maintained by the OIC. It is updated when companies are added, when products are revised, when a company's financial solvency status changes. Updates are published in the Royal Gazette, which is Thailand's official government publication journal, not in immigration office newsletters or expat Facebook groups or press releases to English-language media. The update that changed my situation was published in December 2022. I did not hear about it until February 2023. My insurance agent did not hear about it until I forwarded the email from Kuhn Rataporn. The 90-day compliance clock was running before most of the people it affected knew the rule had changed. Check the list every 6 months. Compare the current version against the version from 6 months prior. If a company has dropped off or if the product description beside a company name has changed, verify immediately that your current policy still qualifies. If you have any pre-existing condition, and I mean any, including conditions that feel minor and well-managed, including things you have been stable on for years, including conditions that your doctor calls controlled and that your day-to-day life barely reflects, assume that the approved insurer selection process will be harder and more expensive than you expect. Do not assume that because you are healthy by your own assessment, you will be treated as healthy by an insurance underwriter. The two framings do not correlate. Contact all 13 approved insurers before you make any irreversible financial commitment to the Thailand plan. If the quotes you receive make the financial case for living in Thailand marginal, the Thailand plan may not be the right answer, not permanently, not ever, but not at this moment with these numbers. There are other countries. Some of them have requirements that interact better with older bodies and common medical histories. None of them are Chiang Mai. But the math is the math. And if you are already here, already in the situation I am in, already doing the calculation I described at my kitchen table in mid-2024, you are not alone. You are not a cautionary tale about recklessness. You are a person who made rational decisions in good faith inside a system that changed its terms after you had committed to it. That distinction matters. Not because it changes the math. The math is the math regardless of whether you deserved this. But because understanding it clearly is the difference between spending the next year blaming yourself and spending the next year building the best version of the life you actually have. I am 68 years old. I live in Chiang Mai. I have a valid visa and a compliant insurance policy and a smaller apartment than I planned for, and a tutoring income I did not expect to need. On Thursday mornings, I sit with a student named Ari, who is preparing for a scholarship application to a university in Edinburgh, and I help her with academic writing and with the particular confidence that comes from believing that your English is good enough to be taken seriously. Last week she read me a paragraph she had written about her grandmother's relationship with Northern Thai textile traditions. It was beautiful. I told her so and she did not believe me, and then I told her the specific reasons why it was beautiful, and she began to believe me. That is still, at 68, one of the best things I know how to do. The mountains are still there. The food is still good. The people are still kind. The math is what it is. And anyone who doesn't do the math before they come is going to do it after. After is much, much harder. Creating those videos is often stressful next to a full-time job. So if you enjoy watching my videos, then please support me by subscribing to my channel. It just shows the algorithm that you like these kinds of videos. See you in the next video.